She doesn't actually want the man who stays, no matter what, the one who clings to loyalty like a life raft. Mistaking endurance for strength, society feeds men this fantasy that if they just endure enough disrespect, tolerate enough inconsistency, and swallow enough emotional neglect, they'll eventually be rewarded with love. But desire doesn't work that way. What truly ignites something deep within her isn't the man who begs for her attention. It's the man who refuses to. The illusion sold to men is that unconditional devotion is noble, that suffering in silence proves love. But in reality, staying when you're disrespected, waiting when you're ignored, or explaining yourself when you're dismissed doesn't make you loyal, it makes you invisible. Women don't fall for the man who orbits their emotions, always available, always forgiving, always hoping. They're drawn to the man who looks at their behavior, recognizes his own worth, and calmly walks away when his peace is compromised. This isn't about games or manipulation. It's about self-respect. The man who stays through mistreatment isn't proving his love, he's proving he doesn't love himself enough to demand better. And deep down, she knows it. She may enjoy the comfort of his presence, but she won't crave it. What lingers in her mind isn't the man who begged her to stay, it's the one who didn't need to. The truth is, desire thrives on tension, not security. A woman doesn't yearn for the man she's certain will always be there. She's electrified by the one who might not be. Not because he's unreliable, but because he's uncompromising. He doesn't leave to punish her. He leaves because he refuses to punish himself by staying in a dynamic that drains him. And that shift from needing her approval to valuing his own. Peace changes everything. The moment a man realizes his worth isn't determined by her attention, the illusion shatters. He sees that real strength isn't in clinging, but in letting go. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. Because the man who walks away isn't losing her, he's reclaiming himself. That's the man she can't forget. The moment you walk away is the moment you become unforgettable. Not because you played hard to get, but because your absence forced her to confront a truth she'd been avoiding. Your value wasn't in what you gave her, but in what she lost when you stopped giving it. Most men think leaving is surrender. But real power lies in the quiet refusal to stay where you're undervalued. Your silence speaks louder than any argument ever could. It doesn't negotiate, beg, or explain. It simply states, through action, that you'd rather be alone than disrespected. Women don't chase the man who tolerates everything. They chase the one who tolerates nothing beneath his standards. When you remove your presence, you create a vacuum where your effort, your consistency, and your loyalty once lived. And in that empty space, something shifts. She starts replaying. Memories she once took for granted, the way you listened, the way you showed up, the way you cared when no one else did. But now it's gone, and the absence stings more than she expected. That's when desire flickers to life, not because you left to provoke her, but because you left to protect yourself. The irony is brutal. The more you tried to prove your worth through devotion, the less she saw it. But the second you stopped proving it, she finally started looking. Not because you tricked her, but because you gave her the rarest gift, the chance to miss you. Most men fear walking away means losing her forever. But the real loss was staying in a dynamic where you were the only one fighting. True desire isn't born from convenience, it's born from consequence. When she realizes your patience wasn't weakness, it was a choice, she begins to question everything. The man who walks away doesn't do it for her reaction. He does it for his own liberation, and that's why it works. Because the man who chooses himself over her approval isn't just leaving, he's leveling up. And nothing is more magnetic than a man who knows exactly what he's worth, even when she didn't. The shift happens when you stop needing her and start choosing yourself. Most men operate from scarcity, afraid to lose her, terrified of being alone, conditioned to believe their worth is tied to her approval. But the moment you flip that script, everything changes. You're no longer the beggar at the table of her affection. You become the prize she has to earn. This isn't about arrogance, it's about self-possession. The man who understands his value doesn't negotiate for love. He sets the terms and lets her decide if she meets them. Walking away isn't rejection, It's redirection. You're not abandoning love. You're redirecting that energy back to where it belongs. You, the irony. The less you need her, the more she questioned why. Women can smell desperation like smoke, but self-assurance, that's intoxicating. When you stop chasing, you force her to confront an uncomfortable truth: you were never the needy one. She was the one who needed your validation, your attention, your emotional labor. And now that it's gone, she's left scrambling to fill the void you once occupied. This is where most men fail. They mistake persistence for strength. But real strength is the ability to walk without looking back. Not because you don't care, but because you care more about your own peace than her potential realization. The man who chooses himself isn't bitter. He's free. And freedom is the ultimate power move. She senses it in the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, the way her opinion no longer dictates your mood. The dynamic flips when you realize you were never the one being chosen. You were the one doing the choosing all along. The moment you internalize that, you stop seeking permission to be valued. You become the gatekeeper of your own worth, and that's when she'll either rise to meet you or fade into irrelevance. Either way, you win because you've already claimed the only prize that ever mattered: yourself. The moment you truly disappear is when she begins to see you clearly for the first time. Distance doesn't just make the heart grow fonder, it forces a reckoning. When you're always present, your value blends into the background like furniture. But when you remove yourself completely, that's when every memory of your consistency, your depth, your quiet strength comes rushing back in painful clarity. She doesn't miss you because you're gone. She misses you because your absence finally allowed her to understand what you actually brought to her life. This is the cruel paradox of desire. It only wakes up when certainty disappears. When she could count on you answering every call, responding to every text, being emotionally available at all times, you became predictable, and predictability is the death of attraction. But when you become someone who might not be there tomorrow, that's when every interaction suddenly carries weight. Your silence becomes more compelling than another man's poetry. Not because you're playing games, but because you've genuinely moved on to more important things than waiting for her to figure it out. Women don't chase the man who makes them feel secure. They chase the man who makes them feel alive. And nothing is more electrifying than realizing the solid, reliable man they took for granted had depths they never bothered to explore. Your walking away forces her to confront the uncomfortable truth: you weren't the safe, boring option she could keep in her back pocket. You were the storm she didn't notice until it passed through town, and now she's standing in the wreckage of her own indifference, realizing too late what she failed to appreciate. The ultimate power isn't in making her want you back. It's in becoming so wholly yourself that whether she does or not becomes irrelevant. That's when real desire is born, not from your absence, but from your absolute refusal to be anyone's second choice ever again. And that man, the one who walked away and kept walking toward something better, that's the man who haunts her thoughts long after the door is closed behind him. The final stage isn't about her at all. It's about who you become in the aftermath. When you've walked far enough that her voice no longer echoes in your mind, that's when the real transformation occurs. You stop being the man who reacted to her and start becoming the man who responds only to his own inner compass. This isn't the wounded ego of rejection talking. This is the quiet confidence of someone who has rediscovered his own worth in the silence she left behind. The irony. By the time she realizes what she's lost, you've already outgrown the version of yourself that cared. Real power emerges when her opinion ceases to matter, not with bitterness, but with genuine indifference. You're no longer the man who walked away angry. You're the man who walked towards something better. And that evolution makes you magnetic in ways you can't fake. She senses it in your calm demeanor, your purposeful actions, your refusal to engage in old patterns. The man she remembers no longer exists. You've become someone who can't be manipulated by attention or swayed by empty promises. That's what haunts her, not your absence. The realization that the man she could have had is evolved beyond her reach. This is where true freedom lives, in the understanding that her chase means nothing unless you decide it does. When you Rebuild yourself so completely that even if she returned, you'd have no space for her chaos. That's when you've truly won. Not because you got her back, but because you got yourself back. The final revenge isn't making her regret. It's becoming so wholly yourself that whether she does or not becomes irrelevant. You're no longer the man who left. You're the man who arrived somewhere better. And that version of you, he doesn't look back.